anyone else joined yet?
Yeah, I guess it's just you, me, and John, though.
Yep. Lisa,
John's on.
Lisa, we're ready to start. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I am going to call to order the Economic Resilience Committee of the Economic Development Commission. And we have in attendance Elizabeth Torgerson and John Barr and myself. And Kelly Hinkle's joining us from Economic Development in St. Mary's County. So we did have a report emailed to us from Brooke because she's not able to attend. And I did download that. We could start with that one. Tristan's not joining us today.
Correct.
And so if everybody's ready to get started, I'll go ahead and bring up Brooke's presentation. We can talk about that. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. So let me open that first. So Brooke reported on food supply disruption, and she did a PowerPoint. Okay, so everybody can see my screen? Mm-hmm. All right. I won't pretend that I've looked at this. I downloaded it, so we're going to discover it together. So she looked at grocery stores, convenience stores, restaurants, and institutions that purchase large quantities of food, such as schools and corporate cafeterias, and smaller hometown producers, which would include small and mid-sized farmers and local businesses, and shifts in food demand. Food demands are increasing. And then she's got the St. Mary's County cottage food business stats here. And not sure about this one. There, and that's not clickable. So that's a picture.
Lisa, without having the benefit of, just like you guys, having perused this early, I think the message here is that the Department of Economic Development is continuing to preserve farmland, not that necessarily there's an increase in overall farmland, but there's an increase in land in permanent perpetual conservation easements.
Okay, thank you for that, Kelly. Wasn't sure what I was looking at there without spending time on it. And this I am familiar with, but I guess it's, just for information purposes. Does anybody have anything that they want to look at in more depth, or have any comments or questions, any discussion needed in any of this?
I just have a comment. I'm not sure the SEDS is the proper format for this, but if you look at the annual revenue for sales cannot exceed $25,000 for these home-based businesses. I mean, if you think about it from a revenue perspective, if you're only making, $25,000 and your margins are 50%, you're only talking about, $12,000. So, I think at the state level, that is something that should be investigated to see if we can increase that number.
Great.
Because that really does not allow for somebody to start a small business. You know, you don't want to start a small business thinking that your revenue, if you can make 50% margins, that your revenue, that your profit is going to be $12,000. Right. That's
Well,
not.
the idea, in case you're not familiar completely with the cottage food business, the idea behind this is it allows people to prepare foods that can be sold at retail without investing in commercial kitchen and meeting those. So these are very specific, reduced regulations that these businesses have to meet. So it allows somebody to, this is more of, it says it's a cottage food business. So this is not really a replacement for a full-time job. This is a side business. So if you were going into business and actually doing a food business, it would be completely different than this cottage food regulations. Did you already know that? Am I telling you something you already knew?
Yeah, I mean, I get the idea of that. It's
Okay.
It could be a side business, a home-based business, but I think still, I think when I did research this, it passed the $25,000. I think that's like from 15 years ago. So I mean, even if you think with inflation, I just think that number needs to be, looked at again, and to say, as a side business, as a home-based business, is $25,000 in revenue. Is that still a good number? Is that still going to attract people to think about doing this? I mean, I understand that it's not for a commercial kitchen, and you're not starting this to think about replacing your a regular job, but I still think that number's a little bit low. And I think if you increased it, you may see an increase in home-based businesses that will eventually expand to somebody operating a commercial kitchen. I mean, if you think about the leap, so for what you would need to operate a commercial kitchen, and you've only had the experience of operating a business with $25,000, you're talking about a tenfold leap at least. So that's a huge jump that somebody would have to make. Going from, hey, I have my home-based business, to now I want to expand this business and make it a commercial business. That's a huge jump. And I think if we could bridge that gap a little bit more, get those, a little bit closer, and just to update that dollar amount, I think it would be a good idea. But like I said, I don't necessarily think that the SEDS is the right avenue for that. I guess that
that's true. But no, you raised some really good points. And being that I work for Small Business Development Center, that may be something that I could champion, but probably not something that we need to pay attention to for SEDS. Yeah.
I think I was going to kind of round out our meeting with this invitation, but this topic is appropriate. The document review subcommittee for the SEDS, at their next meeting on September 15th, has invited the Ag, Seafood, and Forestry Board to give an update, and Elizabeth is involved in that group, and they have also invited the new initiative subcommittee to sit in on that update because there's some crossover, and I think this topic specifically has crossover for the Ag, Seafood, and Forestry Board and for the team in economic development that works with the Ag, Seafood, and Forestry industry. So, John, I think it would be a great question to ask Donna and her team prior to that meeting, so that they would be prepared to give some feedback specifically on this at that meeting.
Okay.
Does everybody want to look at the next slide in more detail? And Kelly had some comments about it, but did anybody else want to talk about this?
Not this slide in particular. It's kind of what's not on the slide deck, and this is, partially through awareness of my own research. the common food supply channels in the county, i.e. the major grocery stores, are predominantly along Route 235 or accessible by 235. So the stores like Giant, Harris Teeter, Weiss, Walmart, I don't think would, unless there was a food supply disruption on a national scale like there was with the pandemic, I don't think that would really be concerned so much as the interruption in the local food supply might be. Because the majority of that is along Route 5, and that coincides with low-lying areas. But that's kind of getting into the part that I researched.
Okay. Yeah, good point. I'm making a few notes on Brooke's presentation so that I can share those thoughts with her as well. But yeah, so I get your point. So the local food supplies are typically located on Route 5, which is in low-lying areas,
Yeah.
which would make them
Susceptible to it, yeah.
Yeah. I can't spell susceptible.
It's SUSCE.
I got it. I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank goodness for spell correct all by
Yes.
itself.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Any other comments anybody wants to add to this part of our research that was turned in today? No?
Nothing for me.
Okay. All right. Who wants to go next? What are all of our topics today? Let me go look.
I put them in the chat, so we would have them right there. Elizabeth is.
Oh, good.
Yeah, early warning tools, economic indicators, and geographic vulnerabilities.
Oh, I don't have that in my chat, but
Oh,
maybe you put it in before you let me in the room?
I don't know. Let me copy and paste it again.
Okay, thanks. Elizabeth, you want to go next?
Yes. Yeah, sure. You froze up there for a bit. So, as far as economic early warning indicators, as far as actually, I think I'll go through this by classifications of sorry, brain went blank, of catastrophic events. So for natural disasters, hurricane, that type of thing, classified. Well, not really a pandemic, that interfaces differently. But the first thing that came to mind is, again, the vast majority of the local food supply runs along Route 5 or Budds Creek Road. And because for Budds Creek Road and Route 5, there are several key spots that are in low-lying areas. In the event that it were to flood, as we saw with Chapsco back in a few years ago, it could severely interrupt the food supply, the ability for the farmers and the watermen to get their crops or food to market. And that could be short-term, it could be long-term, depending on the nature and severity of what disrupted it in the first place. Again, extensive disruptions to low-lying, as far as residential areas, extensive disruptions to low-lying areas for that. Setting up shelters, it may be, and evacuation routes, it may be a matter of, again, short-term or long-term, that people may be displaced depending on severity. The other key area that I noticed is the Leonardtown business route. That gets flooded a lot. It right next to what used to be the Maryland Antique Center. And each time it seems like it disrupts things for at least 3 days on end. As far as early indicators, the most immediate thing that I would think of is the degree of utility disruption, i.e., how many trees are down on power lines, how many SMECO utility trucks have to be sent out, the burden on EMS, burden on, how many ambulances are getting called or firefighters are getting called out to incidents as a result of the catastrophe. Other than that, the level of road incursion, again, primarily from flooding, it could be just general debris in the road. The wind damage from to crops would be another one that could wipe out a harvest easily. So you're looking at 6 months of economic disruption for the individual farmer, at least. Going on to sequestration and budget cuts. Again, it seems like it all comes down to the agriculture and aquaculture, that because the stores would more likely be lowering prices to stay competitive, and on top of that, people would be going for the relatively cheaper food. They would be going towards the grocery stores rather than local farmers markets, because you didn't have as much money that was available to spend. So it would probably hit, ag and aqua and farmers markets first. Decrease spending on consumables or discretionaries, like eating out, eating out / going to restaurants, entertainment, that sort of thing. Let's see. As far as, and it's what happened in 2012, 2013, if you go back and take a look at the economic indicators from that would be a very solid idea of how it might play out the next time around. As far as early warning indicators, the Maryland Jobs Report would be latent probably by a month or two in terms of people filing for unemployment, who's given up, actively looking for a job, and is now transitioned over to the jobless demographic. Let's see. Labor force participation, again, goes back to unemployment and joblessness. How many people are actively employed? How many people are actively looking for jobs compared to an otherwise normative period? Labor force rates, which ties in with the participation. Housing market, again, it would be one of those things that is a bit more latent of an indicator, but still a valuable one nonetheless, simply because more houses might be on the market, or there might be a shift in terms of going from owning to renting, or higher availability of more expensive housing. I mentioned restaurant capacities as well as an indicator. Again, decreased spending on consumables is one of the easier things, in considering that whatever happens here very likely in terms of sequestration or budget cuts would not be an isolated event. It would be more probably looking at the state level, or even more likely the national level. So it would be a reflection of, excuse me, of the numbers across the board on that. The most prescient economic indicator, this is one that kind of requires keeping your eyes on, congressional budget report, but even budget changes each year. There's a budget that's approved. There's probably 500 pages dedicated to defense spending. It's something that's really easy to get a quick sense of, okay, if they've significantly, Congress has significantly cut back on it. Excuse me. Pardon me. Excuse me. On the DoD budget, that's going to have a significant shift, about 6 months delayed from the time of the new fiscal year. And beyond that, looking at the impact on essential workers, sort of along the lines of the same thing that we saw with the pandemic, the same thing that we saw with the sequestration. People weren't spending their money. Aside from the necessities, they weren't spending, their discretionary funds significantly dropped. So the support workers and that part of the labor force were more readily getting laid off because they didn't have the demands that there had been. And finally, as far as cyber attack, honestly, unfortunately, there's really nothing, considering the relative size, i.e. number of employees, the location in the county, and the position in the supply chain, or general sort of import of the company to, or of the industry to keeping things running. Once we know those things, we can better gauge what the impact will be and what will show it early on. But outside of that, outside of having those facts, unfortunately, there's not really anything that would be too prescient. And as far as geographic disruptions, I kind of laid that out already, but the areas of Chaptico, Ridge, Scotland, pretty much the entire lower quarter of the county up into Leonardtown, the Wharf, the business district in that area, all of Newtown Neck Road, Breton Bay as well. They are the vast majority of the established, I don't want to say established housing, but a large majority of Breton Bay would be significantly impacted. Chaptico is another one that comes to mind. Really any area on Bloods Creek Road as well that it could be easily cut off just from a storm surge or flood or any number of things. So, and that's easily identifiable based on just the GIS maps that have the filters and the overlays. So that's my bit. Sorry for taking so long.
There. John, do you want to go next with your cyber attacks?
Yes, I'll go next. So with cyber attacks, I kind of did a case study of two cyber attacks that came to mind. The Leonardtown attack, which just happened recently, and then also there was a cyber attack in Baltimore in May of 2019. So in the Leonardtown case, which North Beach was also hit with the same cyber attack, it was a ransomware attack. It prevented the use of all computers by encrypting the files. So that included billing software, internet access, printing ability, and also the ability to scan. And it prevented Leonardtown from being able to send utility bills. So the resolution of that situation was relying on backup servers to restore system backups. And also the city employees were helping the residents over the phone. And since they didn't have internet access through a hardwire, they were using mobile hotspots.
They were using what?
Mobile hotspots. So through wireless carriers, that's the way they were able to access the internet. So for North Beach, it took them about a week to restore their systems. I'm not sure about how long it took Leonardtown to restore their systems. So moving on to the situation that happened in Baltimore in May of 2019. So that shut down all access to all non-essential services for the whole city. They weren't able to send utility bills, no online payment systems. It also prevented them from using email and phone. So the biggest takeaway from their situation is that they were hosting most of all of their infrastructure internally. So once one server was breached, it pretty much just hopped from one server to the next server to the next server before they were able to capture it or catch it. So we talked at our last meeting, and I believe, Kelly, you said that the county has a disaster response plan. So I think that this would probably be appropriate to address underneath the emergency response plan.
Continuity of operations plan. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I haven't been able to read that document or see what it entails, but I would assume there's something about IT and ransomware. So, but I think there needs to be, if not, I think there needs to be a disaster recovery plan. Excuse me. And so from research from the FBI's cyber attack website, and also DISA, which is the Department of, or CISA, excuse me, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is one of our federal agencies, is that you can, the low hanging fruit is to expand security training for the employees, if that's something that we already aren't doing, and stronger password and user identification to access the websites and access the software. Another takeaway was insurance. So that's another thing in Baltimore's case. They did not have insurance to recover their systems. And so I believe their legal department had moved their email to a cloud-based system. So their legal department was one of the agencies within the city that was still able to function as far as email is concerned. Another thing that CISA discusses is to try vulnerability testing, which means you are testing your security systems, and you're seeing pretty much if it can be hacked in. You're trying to hack in to see what your vulnerabilities are. So CISA also has a toolkit on their website that you can download to assess your network yourself, just based off of an interview and a survey that you do, just answering some questions. So that's a very low risk, no cost thing that we can do within the county to kind of gauge and see where we're at and see how much more money we need to spend on this and other vulnerabilities that we may not be thinking of or that may not be currently addressed within the continuity of services or any upcoming disaster management plan.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. It's funny because I worked in digital space when cloud became new, and everybody was so paranoid that that was going to be the security breach, and now you're talking about it as the security safe hold. And we tried to tell people that when we were, but anyways.
Yeah, I think the great thing about cloud is that it's easier to segment, right? So we can move the whole county onto cloud services, but have segmented services. So each service is siloed, right? So it's not just like how when you have a server, if the server has a virus on it, everything on that server is gone.
Yeah.
And you usually don't notice until it's too late, right? With a cloud-based approach, yes, if one cloud-based system is affected, it's segmented, so you can stop it there, and you still have use of your other system. So I think it's definitely something that we should take a look at.
Yeah, and speaking of training employees, I know CSM has a very rigorous program, and they are constantly trying to catch you. So they send you these fake things that if you click on them, you get in trouble. And I think the first 2 times you get your hand slapped, and the third time you get like, you're in trouble, like big trouble. So, yeah. So, which has made me very leery if I don't know the address, which is the whole point. If I don't know the address, if it doesn't look legit, and I'm not expecting, like they send, oh, you have an invoice. I'm like, I don't get invoices, not in my job. So, yeah.
I've never heard of that, but I think that approach is genius. I think that approach is genius because I think a lot of what happens where you do see intrusions into systems is because people are untrained or people are so overwhelmed or so used to doing something that they just do it without thinking, where it's literally a click of an email, opening one attachment is all of all the IT infrastructure is being held together by it. So
well, it has changed my way of thinking, because I'll tell you, it's human nature to see something that you are like, what's that? And click on it because you're like, what's that? And no, I don't do that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, if you don't know what it is, then don't click on it. So anyways.
Right. Yeah, and so I would say with the Leonardtown situation, so in that case study, it actually had nothing to do with internal employees at Leonardtown at all. It was a third-party IT company, and it was a subcontractor of the third-party IT company that software was infected. So I say all this to say that we could try to do everything right within the county, and there's still going to be vulnerabilities because we're more than likely relying on a third-party company.
Yeah. So, okay, so you notice I wasn't taking notes for either one of you. I'm assuming you both have your own notes. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint that I pulled together. And to be quite honest, it was easy because, as Elizabeth mentioned, sequestration has happened to us in the past. So I had some good material to work from. Give me a second. I got to get switched from Brooks to mine. So I'm just going to share with you information that they presented during the sequestration in 2013. And I'm not going to dwell on it because I'm also going to give you all of the links and you can, read it in more detail yourself. But I'm just going to do a highlight reel here. Okay. So yeah, it starts at the federal level. But of course, it trickles down. And so these were the categories that they flagged. This is a White House paper, a white paper out of the White House during the 2013 crises. And so they said that the ones that were going to impact middle class the most would be education, small business, food safety, research and innovation, and mental health. And then I'm gonna, I have a few more slides, so it goes into a little bit more detail. Security and safety. Again, they're talking about this not just at the federal level, but it does trickle down because if you look under emergency responders, reduction of state funds that support local firefighters and state and local emergency personnel. And then the research and innovation, we're in a region that depends on this because of Pax River and all of the other advanced research that we do have going on in this area. So that is of a concern for our region. And economic growth, to elaborate a little bit more on what I touched on with small business impacting middle class, you're talking about, they were talking about a reduction of $902 million in loan guarantees from the SBA during 2013. And keep in mind, economies of scale, we're almost 10 years, well, we're almost 10 years past this. So, with inflation and everything, that dollar amount would be greater if it should happen now or in the future. And then you've got the restriction of Economic Development Administration's ability to support projects that increase local job creation and international trade administrations for export-import businesses and supporting that effort. Food safety, the FDA would be reducing their capacity, and IRS can't get a hold of them during if people are not at work. I remember that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I remember that. That was an issue. Especially because of the timing that it happened. It happened at the beginning of the year. So that was a concern.
There were either that year or the next year set a record for how many people got audited, probably because they couldn't get their questions answered.
Right, probably. Yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, makes sense, right? And then you've got a lack of OSHA inspectors, which puts people's lives at risk while they're at work. And education, I thought this was really a serious impact and concern because you're looking at the monies that are now available to help disadvantaged students, to help children that need special education, and Head Start and Early Head Start. So those were some serious concerns. And then economic security, I didn't put all the details. I did give you the link, so if you want to read more on each of these, but you can see that these are the people that need the help the most, and they would be impacted by this. So you're talking Social Security, senior meals, WIC, rental assistance, unemployment, homelessness programs, and then of course public health with mental health and substance abuse services. And that has further impact on the healthcare, because if they can't get their usual mental health and substance abuse services, then hospitals are added into the burden, and so the justice system as well. So that has further impact. So this was state specific. I pulled this, and it said that 26% in 2012, 26% of the state of Maryland's budget came from federal grants. So another trickle-down impact. And then Hoyer did a talk in 2013, and he related state-specific information. So he's talking about losing $14.4 million in funding for primary and secondary education, and about 200 teachers and aides with jobs at risk, 770 fewer low-income students to receive aid to help them finance college. And that's a serious loss for the state of Maryland. And the work-study programs that some of these disadvantaged students rely on to help them get through college. And you can see all the red highlights. Patuxent River came right up in this report. So, because you're talking about Maryland's defense community, and they were looking at $114 million in spending cuts. And that meant $9 million right here at Patuxent River. So that's kind of sobering. And those are the links to the reports that I pulled from. Does anybody want me to go back? Do you want to read any of these in more detail? I'll just share this with Kelly, and then Kelly can share it with all of you. So that was easy because it's been done. Hopefully not to be repeated.
Yeah. Goodness, or God willing, but considering the current state that we find ourselves in with the pandemic spending, and on top of that, buying infrastructure bills. And this entire time, I'm not sure if any of you have been keeping up with the news, but as of, I think it was July 4th, when Congress recessed for technically the summer, they did so without doing anything about the debt ceiling that had been suspended for the last 2 years, and they still haven't done anything about the debt ceiling. And Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, had been warning them that you can't keep hitting pause on this. So as a result, I think as of the 1st or 14th of this month, she had to start taking prophylactic measures and froze all federal TSP accounts, like I think it was bond contributions to them that for the accounts that would not immediately be paid out. And that's just one measure in the arsenal that could keep going, considering both parties, it seems like, have been putting up such resistance to that, something like increasing the debt ceiling. I kind of worry what that might mean down the road in a few years. But, if both infrastructure bills get passed and we have a rapidly increasing amount of debt over the last 4 or 5 years, and the Republicans being, well, I don't want to say they're regional close, but it being who they are and wanting to shrink that budget, that there may be a reactionary overcompensation that could send us back into sequestration.
Given what COVID has done to the economy, we're treading on very thin ice, I would say, economically. Just that alone, and then add to it politics and and I can understand them being reluctant to address the debt ceiling because COVID's not over, and we don't know how much more debt the federal government is going to throw at this.
Yeah, it's a rubber band that it's got to snap back at some point, and when it does, it always goes the other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
We're Des Moines, everyone.
Yeah, I've been loosely following the news about the debt ceiling, and I think right now the current plan is to pass it as part of the reconciliation budget. So
Okay,
I think
good.
the plan is to just put
Which
a
the
line.
House did as of a few days ago.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's the plan. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that, but I mean, at any change of administration, if there's a change of administration, whether it be a change at the House in 2 years or a change at the presidency in 4 years, I think that there's going to be difference in priority. So there's definitely opportunity for
A snapback.
a different approach to spending.
Well, I think that was a really good discussion, and I think we got some really good reports out of that. I think Kelly had suggested that we have these ready for the next time that we meet as an EDC, which is October,
October 20th.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and sorry to interrupt before I forget, there was one really interesting thing that I came across in my research for all of this. There's a toolkit. There's literally an economic resilience toolkit out there, and it's recommended by the EDA. It's called Leadership in Time of Crisis. It's on recoveryoureconomy.org, I believe. And it goes through point by point what to look for, what areas to address, everything. So, in fact, I think I have the URL somewhere.
What did you say you thought it was on?
RestoreYourEconomy.org. I'll send everyone the URL right now.
Okay. Hi, Chris.
Okay.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yep, no problem.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I'll add that to our notes from today. That link.
Okay.
Okay, so Don and Elizabeth, if you want to send your typed up reports to Kelly.
Will do.
Sure
Okay.
thing.
And then she can share it with everyone on this team. And then we can be prepared to do that in October.
Yeah, I'll combine all the documents and we'll distribute it for the full EDC quarterly meeting in October.
Are we meeting again? Is this team meeting again, or we have another one on the?
Our
schedule? I
next
don't recall.
meeting that is
We should be.
scheduled is December 1st. So,
Okay, so we're not meeting again until before the EDC meet.
right, we're not meeting before the EDC meeting, which actually I think might work out great, Lisa, because you've all done your research. I think unless that research has changed anyone's thinking on how we're going to move forward with a scope for the consultant to focus, then you would be presenting these areas to the full EDC on the October 20th, and they may have some recommendations or additions or changes to give their blessing to you guys moving forward. Then we can pretty much finalize a scope based on their recommendations on the 20th. And then the next time this group would meet would be December 1st. If there was any additional information that needed to be inserted in an RFP, that would kind of be the last time to do it on that December
Hey, Kelly?
1st. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Considering that we aren't going to be meeting in November because of Thanksgiving, it looks like September 29th is still open. There's a subcommittee week, meeting the previous 2 weeks, but it looks like the 29th is still open for another meeting for this committee.
I can check to see if this room is available if you all want to do another meeting before the 1st. If that's what you're telling me, you want to do another meeting before October 20th, the deciding factor will be whether or not the commissioner meeting room is available.
Okay.
Because I have to be in this meeting room to broadcast on YouTube and Channel 95.
Lisa, John, what do you think?
I'm available on the 29th of September, so that'd be fine with me.
Yeah, I can make myself available.
Awesome.
And
All right,
Elizabeth,
so Kelly, let us know.
yeah, I definitely will. And the goal for that meeting would be to run through all this again in preparation for October 20th?
Yeah, my way of thinking, and maybe this is what Elizabeth is getting at, is after we send these reports to you and then you share them with each of the team members, that'll give each of us a chance to digest it and see if there's anything that we really want to focus on, and just kind of condense it all before the October meeting, because some of what I had in that White House paper, it may be more than we need to include because it may not directly impact the state or Southern Maryland. Just as an example.
No, I think that's great. And then it will also give Tristan an opportunity to present his research as well.
Right. Give us one more chance to talk about it
Sure.
before we get in front of the whole commission. So yeah, if you've got the room available, let us know.
Yep, I'll definitely check it in the morning.
Does anybody have any other comments, questions, thoughts? No? All right, then I move that we conclude today's meeting. Any seconds?
I'll second that.
All right. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank-
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.